Hello everyone, we are back for another episode of the Crypto Use Case podcast. We are joined today by Juliana Felipe from Transfero. Juliana, thanks a lot for joining us. We are very excited to have you and to dive in the weeds when it comes to anything LATAM, crypto, Transfero, your background, and more. So thanks a lot for joining us. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to chat with you today for sure.
Awesome. Well, Juliana, maybe let's start with some of the easy topics. We're very curious to learn more about your background and your story. This is something that we always ask our attendees because in many cases the story leads into where you are today, what you're doing today. So tell us, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your personal story, some of your first jobs, your career overview. There was a lengthy career based on what we were able to find on our side, ranging from tech to crypto, Paxos, and now Transfero. But please tell us a little bit more about your background and your story.
Sure. So I'm from Rio, but I live in São Paulo for 10 years, as it's just a financial city, as you know, like a little bit about Brazil. Actually, I started my career as a headhunter, which helped me a lot to target the markets that I would like to work, and technology, for sure, it was one. If I think about my story, there was one experience that was really important that was at LinkedIn. I worked 7 years at LinkedIn, and I was one of the first employees to be hired for the office in Brazil. So I feel like I've been in emerging technologies for a while. I was in LinkedIn in the time that it was a new thing, a trendy thing, a social media. And people used to ask me why I should have Facebook and LinkedIn. I already had Facebook, I'm fine. And they would know about Instagram, about TikTok, about so many other social networks, and how LinkedIn would be empowering business and people and professionals today. So at the time at LinkedIn, I learned a lot about how to build a business, the culture, and everything else about the technology and how it was shaping and changing the world and our demands and connectivity. In parallel, I used to mentor a lot of startups for free. Like I love to share more how they would improve business at LinkedIn and marketing and everything from my background. And then after 7 years leading the teams here in Brazil, I went to a company that was a startup on WhatsApp messaging, which had a lot on AI and everything else. But, when I learned about the blockchain, the power of the stable coins and crypto and everything else, I just got like, this is the one trendy technology that I really believe it will be the future. And I would love to go to this technology. So I had the opportunity to start my career in crypto and blockchain like 2.5 years ago at Paxos. I was the one hired to structure the whole LATAM operation in Brazil for them, which was an amazing experience. Paxos is one of the most regulated companies in the space. I learned so much from the founders and the teams. Like I really learned a lot doing in a really regulated way, in a more shaped way, institutional way, which was really interesting. And after 1.5 years, I went to Transfero, which is a Brazilian one, a more wider one if you think about solutions, which we will talk in a second moment. But really, the infinity of things that Transfero build and the things that we can build from scratch, here, it's amazing. And that's why I just took the opportunity. But I feel like blockchain will be my 10, 20 years from now technology to be in, because I really think we're in a turning point of the market, which a lot of things will be built. And I think 10 years from now, we'll look back and see, wow, how many amazing things were built.
Awesome. So a short disclaimer, I lived in Sao Paulo for a year, and Brazilians call it the New York of Brazil. So like if you go to Faria Lima, where all these all big offices are, it looks like a little bit like Manhattan. And Brazil is a massive country for those that have never been, not only in territory. I think the GDP is like $2 trillion. So it's like a tenth of the US, right? So it is very sizable and the largest Latin American country. But so for our listeners, some context there. Juliana, can you tell us a little bit more, like what specifically about blockchain excited you? And you mentioned stable coins, which we're obviously excited about. But like, what was the moment where you were like, okay, this is it, right? Like, can walk us through that?
Well, I think in Brazil, we have a lot of movements from the Brazilian central bank and the movement on tokenizing the economy. And when we think about it, like recently, I had one case that can experiment like how I could shape and make it better, an important solution for society. So I have double citizenship, Brazilian and German, and I was taking a certificate from my son. And then I took like more than 5 days in a traditional bank in Brazil to make it manually with the FX desk, a document that I could receive my documentation. It's not like in Brazil, we use a lot of Pix, which is still not the blockchain, but in the user experience works really well. But, it should be simpler and easy, like a Web3 operation or a movement of the money, like everything in our society. And I have small kids. They want everything in a click. Why our money cannot be in a click? And when you think about the systems in the financial system worldwide, even though United States, which is a big nation, right? Like they're super old dated. They have outrageous old systems where it doesn't align with connectivity that we need today. Like we have Netflix where you see everything you need in a click. You have Spotify where you hear musics everywhere in a click. Today you can buy anything you want in a click. So why the money is even not instant as it should? And it's really something really exciting if we think about, of course, the opportunity for business. But if you think about financial inclusion, if you think about social inclusion, crypto is the first technology, like not the first one. Social media is global, but it born global. Anyone could access. It's not like if you're in Brazil, you have limited access. So if you're in the United States, it's a different one. It was open, wide open for the whole world. So it's amazing how we can change that. And if we think about how it came live, it came from the war, from the spies, and how we can manage everything, and still with transparency to make it easier to trace everything that is happening. So today we have the open ones, we have the permission ones, like we can manage that in a super easier way. And I feel like the stable coins are, if you think about everything digital, the user experience, especially in Brazil with all the fintechs and services that we have, it's like the UX is amazing. But there's a lot of things in the back office where we don't see, which blockchain can solve and make it all instant as it is for the user experience. So it was something really exciting to be a part of, and I've been loving it. And the most interesting thing that I feel about the market is everyone is so collaborative. Like I have competitors that were building things together, and everyone is so open to build. I think the market is hard for everyone. So we get together to make it happen, to make the turning point on the market. So this is something that I've never seen. I worked with several emerging markets, and there was, his competitor. He worked at that company. Oh, it's better not to share information. Of course, we're not sharing information we should not need, but we look in the market in a way that we can build things together. We can exchange infrastructure, which we have a lot. For example, if I think about an on and off ramp in the United States where I don't have a structure and I haven't let down, how we can work together to enable both to be global, for example. So there is several ways that we can build a better economy and better solutions together. And everyone, I feel, is really open to do it. So it's really exciting.
And Juliana, maybe a step back from how financial markets, financial infrastructure works in Brazil. You of course hear of how many people in the region, in the country, are becoming financially literate, starting to invest, getting their first hands-on experience with, stocks, bonds, and so forth, and cryptocurrencies, of course. But you having grown up there, can you walk us through, what that journey looked like for society? How were people at first interacting with financial products, with bank accounts? How did we get to Pix, which many people don't know, maybe that are listening in the podcast, but Pix is basically the government-owned payment system, and it's essentially instantaneous, very effective. So can you walk us through this transformation of financial services, of banking infrastructure, of how people interacted with the services and where we are nowadays? Would be curious to learn more about that.
Sure. And then I'll add more touch on the Brazilian Central Bank and the initiatives that it's doing, which I think it's really connected with the innovation that we have. So as you know, Brazil is a really innovation hub for fintechs and other markets and technology as well. I feel like in Brazil, we have several people. It's a really huge nation, and we always stuck with financial inclusion. There's a lot of unbanked people, underbanked people that cannot open a bank account because or they're not a legal employee or several things that are missing. And the Brazilian central bank is being kind of moving the needle to really tokenize the economy in a way that we can bring innovation and more access to the users. For example, Pix started and connected very well with the pandemic, which helped a lot. But the first step, or Roberto Campos, the president of Banco Central of Brazil, it was to really enable instant payment, like in an easier way without taxes for the people. If we think about a lot of informal merchants, for example, today in Brazil, how they operate, they talk via WhatsApp and they say, oh, please pay me on Pix, which is a code. You can be your identity number, it can be your telephone number, you can be a random one. And then you put the key, you pay, you send, and the person delivers in your home, like bread or cakes or a lot of informal things that you buy in your day by day. So I feel like it was really promising and really successful. One, it was launched in the pandemic. So anyone lost the in-person contact and going to the market and shops and etc. The second piece was it really worked well. Instant in a UX. So you really put the key, you pay, and that's it. It's 1 second, you send the...
If I may summarize like my experience with Pix for people in crypto, it's like a free L2 that everyone in the country has agreed to use with a naming service. So with my phone number or my email or my social security, the CPF in Brazil, I can find you. So you don't have to send like this very long address. And that has kind of finality, like essentially with a BRL stablecoin, if you will. So if I'm sending money to you, it feels like we don't have to decide which L2 or blockchain we're going to use. We don't have to decide exactly which stablecoin we're going to use. Even if you have one bank and I have another, there will be a connection via the central bank and a final settlement in between those two. And then I just need to know like who you are to pay. And even with that kind of ENS, I will get a confirmation. So if you just give me your email, I'll see your name and know, okay, this is the right person to send. So the implementation of the solution was very, very well built. Sorry, but like for people who have not used Pix, it's like very easy to underestimate. It was very well implemented. And I think it's now like 40% of payments or something crazy like that, like a massive amount.
It's breaking records every week.
Yeah, so I'll let you continue, but I think it's a good parenthesis to like, this is a country that has amazing payment systems, and we'll get into what Transfero is doing, because it's not about solving a system that doesn't work. It's a system that's like kind of working quite well, which is probably not the case for many crypto founders. So yeah, sorry, I'll let you continue.
Thank you so much for adding more context. And if we think about the strategy, it started with Pix. Now we have the Open Finance, which is a really huge project to really make sure that we have an app with all the financial service where you can choose the best one. So as we have marketplaces and several other options. And if we think about the Drex pilot and the tokenization of the economy, it's just to make sure that the Brazilian Central Bank is building a lot of tests with companies and not just with the government, with the companies that are leading banks, new banks, fintechs, to make sure that we can, in a safe environment, test all the use cases where we need to have solutions. For example, payment internally, it's not one, but how we can manage the credit that you have or international payments. Or in Brazil, they talk a lot about two cases. When you buy a car, when you buy a house, like you sometimes go to the cartório, I don't know what would be in English, the exact term, but in a place where you need to sign the document, the notary, and make sure that you pass the money. Okay, it's in my account, so now I will sign the document. It's something not safe, not reliable, really uncomfortable when you're with someone else trying to sell something. So the technology would enable by smart contracts, for example, that you have it easier and faster and instant and safe to make sure that when you pass your name to the document, the money will be in your account and you just can do two ways in the same time. And several use cases, like imagine that today you have investments, right? You have your money where you deal with the utility and you have bonds and you have like money invested. You can use this money as a credit for something else. So you can manage better. There's a lot of initiatives in not in real estate, for example, that you can buy a part of the house and then you can manage some parts of it to make it easier to have more access. and to manage your portfolio better. So I feel like there are several use cases that they are envisioning, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's to replace with time, because it would not be from one day to another, replace a system that we understood and the governments are showing that they understood that is not the best up to date in the technological society that we're living and the level of safety that we need. And that's why like Transfero came into play. Just for a quick context, I will not get in. Do you want to talk something, Martin?
No, yeah. Before we dive into Transfero, because once we go in, we're not gonna go back. So just some numbers, right? So the biggest bank in Brazil is called Nubank. Sorry, it's Itaú. It's the traditional biggest bank. It's worth 53 billion. Nubank is the biggest fintech. I think they hold a banking license now, but they originally launched as a payment app. It's now 60 billion in market cap. And for context, for international listeners, Block, or formerly known as Square, is 58 billion, and PayPal is 86 billion. So we're talking about massive financial providers that are at the scale of the fintechs that we all know in the US, kind of leveraging all of this innovation. So I think of Brazil as the place where the TradFi side is accelerating the most, maybe competing with India. But I think if you look at the actual payment penetration, Brazil seems to be a lot stronger than India's UPI. And they just didn't stop there. So there's all these things that you were mentioning. So massive innovation. And let's flip into Transfero then. So in this country, massive fintech innovation, financial services are working very well. The central bank is very effective. Why Transfero? What does Transfero do? Tell us a little bit, and what do you think the edge is for crypto in these markets?
As a professional in a new world environment, it's really good to have both sides. So I worked in the American company, the structure around the whole regulated United States with a vision, where I learned a lot. And now I'm in a Brazilian one that, if I think about Paxos, there was stablecoins, crypto as a service. Now they have some initiatives, but these were those two solutions that we were selling. If I think about Transfero, we're in the moment that Transfero is a company that, one, is Brazilian, two, have Brazilian partners in almost 10 years of history. They started the regulation stack in Switzerland for obvious reasons. And 10 years ago, we did not have a regulation. We still don't have. We're planning to have next year. So they started there. We have several VASPs licenses in Bahamas, several other places like Argentina, Brazil. As an IP, we don't have the payment license as well. And these solutions that they build, it's amazing for one company with less than 200 people. We have today in Transfero several arms. So if we think about the blockchain one, we have payments, we have pay in and pay out, we have ramps, we have stablecoin network, which includes one paired with Brazilian reais, one paired with Argentinian pesos, and now one in Chile, and several partnerships all over the world to make sure that we're really connected globally. We offer now, we're launching this month, so soon you have news in the media, but we're launching the project with a supermarket in Brazil for a checkout. So in the store, you'll be able to pay with crypto and stable coins. So if you have foreign people in Rio and in Sao Paulo, they want to pay with their wallets, they don't need to FX anymore in these supermarkets specifically. And we have a really good partnership with VTEX, where it enables us to their merchants to have in the marketplace and structure the payment gateway via Transfero with stablecoins and crypto, which we're expanding and working on the utility. So a quick recap, right? This one arm, they took the blockchain and they built it all. And it's amazing how they built. And they're in a moment of bootstrap that they're looking for the first round of investment, which is amazing to have me as the person to structure for a global expansion, because now we're really focused on Latam to offer those solutions, but we want more. We want Asia, Europe, and so on. We are looking in a way that we are building utility, which is really hard to build. And I have it at all, and I don't need intermediaries to build this really whole solution for any company that needs to operate in Brazil or Argentina or soon in other places around the world. And alongside, they have one investment company that it's called Transfero Ventures, which we invest in several other initiatives that are built on top of our infrastructure, which brings innovation as we go. And we have another arm on the asset and prime, which is financial advisory, but we have the oversight of CVM, which is our SAC in Brazil, to build bonds and funds. So we have it all. So we have investment, we have the infrastructure. We work mainly on B2B right now, but we started as a B2C. We still have the Transfero app, but our goal is really to be the infrastructure for a B2B to structure the whole business. And it offers me a lot of good pricing because everything is on the house. The network on stablecoins, I feel, is something really magical because then you can operate between those countries. There's a lot of things that will change with the regulation next year for sure. And each country is different. So we'll be aligned with the regulators to make sure that we make all the adjustments needed, if needed. But it's amazing how Transfero built, and that's why I thought it was really exciting to come as a chief revenue officer to review all the things that we build, productize it better, and build really institutional and structure worldwide expansion in the business. So that was the main drivers.
So that's an awesome overview. Let's kind of deep dive by segment, right? So you gave a
Sure.
nice overview of all of the products that you have. Maybe starting like my perception. So I discovered Transfero from kind of like the on and off ramp, and I don't know if that was the first product, but that's at least how I discovered it. And then the stable coin that you built to power that on and off ramp. So maybe we can start with that, and then we get into payments. Tell us a little bit about like that on and off ramp. Why would you use crypto to on and off ramp? Like, what are people trying to achieve by using this? And then maybe if you can tell us like why build your own stable coin to power that. We've seen a bunch of players doing on and off ramps, running their own desks, but not creating their own stable coin. We had Yellow Card, who's doing on and off ramps for a bunch of businesses in Africa, and they're using USDT, and they trade with local fiat. They didn't build their stable coin. So maybe tell us a little bit about the on and off ramps and the kind of the thinking of building your own stable coin.
Perfect. So if you think about on and off ramp, we were crypto native. Like the company started really opening financial services and making the freedom. The first slogan that we had was be free, be crypto. So really got this idea when you can move the money to this digital representation and make sure that you have more access to it. But I feel like the partners were really smart because a lot of companies are kind of building now the stable coin. So when we think about, we have our OTC desk, for sure. And when we think about the ramps, it's something really important to enable people to access Web3, access everything. So it's just something really plug and play, I would say. When we think about the stablecoin, it brings you a lot of capabilities as a rail, financially specific in cost. You can manage the whole structure. You don't need an intermediary to do the business where you increase costs and other things, other integrations, and maybe other gaps or obstacles that you can have technical problems. So I feel like the partners were really innovative and creative and really looking forward to really build the stable coin to make sure that we could manage all the efficiency behind the scenes, which a lot of other players are building as well, right? So we can offer liquidity. We can do via stable coins. We can make our process via our stable coins, having autonomy in the process and having the best price. So I thought it was really smart. And as a lot of other people now have, for example, we have BRZ, which was the first and more structured stable coin pair with Brazilian reais. But we have in Argentina, we have in Chile. We have capabilities between those countries and no one else has. And if we open new ones or we have capabilities between these countries, of course, always align with the regulation in each one. But I feel like this is the key. It's not to have in one country, it's having all to really have the network on international payments, ramps, and everything that you need between countries, which I feel is the most it's the most difficult solution use case that people are not solving now in the market.
Can you tell us a little bit about like what are people looking to do? Like what's the actual, why are people using Transfero, or like Transfero is enabling a service? What is that service? We love to hear about like what why are people going to crypto if we have all this fintech innovation elsewhere? And I have my own hypothesis, but I would love to hear from you. Like, if you look at the flows going through, like, what are these people trying to achieve? Are they buying Bitcoin? Are these B2B payments? Are these remittances? What's going on these flows?
And especially considering how efficient Pix is as a system, it feels like the transition from TradFi banking, Itaú, Bradesco, and more to neobanks makes sense. It's really about access, internet-enabled banking and financial services. But once you're in this internet-enabled banking and financial services, what is the improvement that comes with something like a stable coin, blockchain enabled financial services? And yeah, what are some of these use cases that your clients are asking you to support?
Perfect. So if you think about the B2C average Brazilian, most of them use as an investment, right? The volatility to get earns and things like that. Staking is something that's really trendy. And I think the most advanced one, sophisticated one, to access Web3, which has more aggressive options, if we think about it. If you go to the B2B, which mainly is where I'm targeting, we have examples like we offer liquidity for exchanges. For example, Bybit is a huge customer of ours. If we think about import and export COMEX companies, we are able to move the money in a more efficient way between countries. Remittances is another one which is really demanded. We have like treasury when we think about the stable coins and the movements that you need to do, paying suppliers and other cases that you need to pay in different regions. But I feel like the most challenging parts, the regulation will enable, which is the utility in the day by day. So still, there's several companies, and I'll not talk about Transfero, but there is one company that I heard recently that you can buy apartments or houses in the United States or another place with stable coins in this area, for example. So you enable people to use this digital money to make it easier a purchase abroad, which today Pix solve internally. They don't solve internationally yet, for example. So I feel like there are several use cases. But if we think about the average Brazilian B2C, it's still like to invest and stuff. But now with
And
the
for that,
regulation, sure.
sorry, for that B2C Brazilian, is it like Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, like volatile assets, or are they buying stable coins? My perception of Brazil is the price of the US dollar has been like, it has escaped this last couple of weeks. So now it's like at 6 Brazilian reais per dollar, but it's been like around 550 for like forever, seems like. Do people like, I think that the dollar use case, like dollarizing is very big in other, like I'm from Argentina and Venezuela. Like I think it's stronger there. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think so. Like Argentina, the inflation rate is so much higher, and I have a team there. We have operations, so it's different. Today, I feel like we're educating the Brazilians to say dollarize your money because you have less losses, and in the second moment, be able to pay this even in Brazil, like for a dollarized wallet or money that you have invested. But I feel like in all those cases, we need to educate the market. And still, we don't have a regulation in several markets, so people don't feel so comfortable. Today, we have like 10 million Brazilians from 200 million to really invest. So it's small piece. And
It's
when the
still 5% of the population. It's still huge, right?
Exactly. So when we have the regulation, I'm sure you get to the mainstream with the right protocols and processes and oversight and rules to make sure that we don't have scams and frauds. We will always have, but in a smaller amount and scale. But I feel like this is what is missing to get the utility, which is the most difficult one, right? To really use whatever you want, to pay whatever you want and be easy and faster with all the capabilities that we offer today. Today, I have a really mindset on a B2B basis, B2B2C basis, but I feel like that's the turning point. When we have the regulation clear, then it gets to its mainstream, and now people are building the capabilities as it go. And I mentioned just some, but there are several other ones that we will build.
Yeah, and that makes sense from an education standpoint. I like the example of the supermarket and coming there as a foreigner and being able to pay with stable coins or cryptocurrencies. Transfero takes care of all of the back end, all of the infrastructure to make it easy for these vendor, these businesses. The cross-border payments discussion, remittances discussion, of course, also makes sense. It's already a massive market for stable coins. I guess, Juliana, talking about regulation specifically in Brazil for digital assets, as someone that lives in the United States, it feels like Brazil is a forward-thinking jurisdiction and region with regard to digital assets. I mean, all of the tokenization pilots that are being run in the country, all of the support for stable coins and so forth, it's pretty prominent on the headlines. But how are you guys seeing the relationships with regulators, the development of regulation supporting the use cases that you're discussing?
Yeah, I feel like the Central Bank of Brazil is being really strategic and really smart to collaborate with the market, not just with the government and building something that they think it's right, but they're talking to everyone in the market to learn from their experience. We are creating things from scratch that never existed. We're trying new things where they want to learn from. So this is something really good for what we're building in Brazil specifically. I've heard about India, I've heard of a lot of other countries in the world, but we are working on the public consultation. We are working in everything that they can do to bring innovation to the table and safety for the end user, which is the balance between the two of them, which I feel is really smart. There are some delays in the process because there's so many things to learn and to build, but I feel like we are in a good moment to test and to make sure that next year, I hope, we will have a good balanced regulation. And again, we had several things that happened. Like we have a president from Bacen that will be replaced. Like the new one will start next year. We have several other delays from strikes with the employees. So there were several things that happened during the course, but they never took the priority over this project, which is really positive. And it's promising to really have it concrete next year. So we're really excited, especially us, which are fully regulated, to understand how we will adjust our collateral, reserves, structure, if it's needed, to make sure we're 100% compliant.
And I guess in terms of fintechs and neobanks, you're starting to see some of these. I don't want to call them legacy because they're definitely more modern than a big traditional bank in Brazil. But some of the main neobanks that we discussed earlier, we are starting to see them interact and support digital assets. So is Transfero also involved in supporting these businesses, providing them infrastructure to be able to handle this type of payments, savings accounts, or whatnot? How much do you see them as synergies that you can unlock versus competitors that you might be working against?
Perfect. So there are several ways that we're trying to build the utility. So if we think about the checkout, it's something that each merchant can do. We are bankerizing some business. We have a white label for crypto as a service for our app, which offers all the options that we mentioned. If we think about payments and ramps, we can help foreign companies to start the operation fresh with not a lot of costs and regulation costs, legal costs, to make sure that they see the potential and operates well. And the pricing is really low. So it's just a small spread over the amount. So it's really worth it, especially for you to test the market that you're in. There are several other ones that we are testing and looking, but feel like several industries like Comex, for example, there's so many problems moving the money and so many taxes involved and so many costs. Like there are several easier ways that we're building, and then we have some benchmark, which will be announced just in 2025. And on the white label piece, it's amazing how you can just plug in the API and test your own bank with all the infrastructure from another vendor. Sometimes, like I worked at Paxos, where I had the crypto as a service for Nubank in the first moment, right? It's easier for them to plug and play with an expert to then build their own rails as another customer, for example. So I see that we act as a really safe test environment for several companies that want to test in crypto and stuff. And when we think about the biggest TradFi banks that you mentioned, I will not mention names, but when you talk about the head of digital assets of those TradFi big banks, they say, we're offering this because our customers want it. They really wanted it with our safety guard. So this is something really powerful. People want the innovation, but want the safety guard. And still there are some people that just believe in the old traditional banks, but new bank is a new bank, and the experience is amazing. And the safety is, I worked with them in the past with Paxos, and they're really super focused and compliant and public company, for example. So I feel like the money is safe in several ways. We just need to learn more to understand who are the right players for us to work with that will give us more safety on the reserves and collaterals and the money itself that unfortunately today is still always at the end of the day in a bank, right? In a traditional one where the bank, the fiat one, is there representing the collateral for the stable coin and for several other use cases that we have in this market.
Yeah. Two questions that I have for you. The first one is, let's say we fast forward 10 years from now. Do you think most Brazilians are going to be consuming crypto via a traditional bank? Or do you think it's going to be via kind of like new companies and so on? And then the second one around stable coins is, where do you think the local stable coins, local meaning like Brazilian real, Argentinian peso, Chilean peso, like where do you think those go, right? Like what's the 10 years from now, like what are they competing with PIX? Like what exactly are they doing?
Okay, so I'll start with the second one and then I'll switch to the first one. So everyone asks me, do you think the Drex, the Real Digital will kill the stable coins? Right? This is the question. And yeah. I believe not. We have several ones now paired with Brazilian reais, but at the end of the day, how the flow will go. Today you have a credit card. You choose the one that gives you better cash back. You don't have to pay annual fees. You have incentives from different ones. If you think about the structure of open finance, is the same thing. You have the portfolio of options and you get the one that's more interesting for you, for your needs. So if you think about it, we will have the Real Digital running in the central bank, the reserve. And then we have the bank, which will be the first connection. The bank will continue having insurances and all the structure with the end user, which they will white label this money as they want in a digital form or another one. So think about the Real Digital. They will be everywhere. There will be a lot of use cases built. But at the end of the day, the bank will create their white label campaign, incentive, cashback, or something else that people will prefer. When I worked at Paxos, they did the white label for PayPal, and several banks that I spoke with were interested about white label one. Sometimes it's easier to use USDC or USDT because they're done, they're good, they have all the reserves, they're ready to use. But sometimes the banks want a white label one, for example, and that's where it comes to play. So I feel like stablecoins will continue being the hit in this second piece, the bank with the user, with the new fintechs with the user. And the question that you mentioned about the TradFi and exchanges, I feel like even now it's changing in Brazil, talking about my perception in my reality here, but the exchanges has a different rule. We don't have, in Paxos, I used to work with bankruptcy remote, for example. This is not a reality for Brazil. We don't have segregated assets. So there's a lot of things that are being built, which were different from a TradFi perspective and an exchange perspective or a fintech perspective. So I feel like today they're building a regulation that kind of will unify both. So at the end of the day will be, one, the open finance when it hit, which are the options that I have, which will be more interesting. Of course, older people will prefer the Itaú, the Bradesco, the Santander, the big ones that they spend the whole life with. Maybe they will stick to it. But I feel like the new generation wants something more free. Like if you think about Nubank, a lot of people under average of a minimum salary has accounts with Nubank. It's easy. It's faster. They don't have any problems. They can configure in the biometry like they have access. So at the end of the day, I feel like still reputation is important. But when we have a regulation kind of putting everything in the same bucket, in the same rules, and when we have the UX defining it and the incentives, then we will see who will win. I don't know who will.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Awesome. And maybe a question around the broader crypto landscape in Latin America. Juliana, we again know of Argentina, we know of Venezuela, these markets that need stable coins and crypto for a survival matter, really. But when you compare again Brazil to maybe other places in Latin America or in Central America, like Colombia, like Chile, and so forth, how are you guys seeing adoption of the technology? How are you thinking about expansion and strategy related to how you will serve these markets and their customers, whether on the B2B front or on the B2C front or the B2B2C front, right? How are you thinking again about crypto more broadly in LATAM? How do the market differ one from the other? And how are you crafting your strategy to make sure that you guys are effective?
Perfect. As a regulated strategy, it's always regulated. How will I build the best redundancies in each country and how I get the right licenses to operate properly? So these are the things that we're looking for. If we think about efforts from Transfero, we still have operation in Argentina, in Chile, Colombia, Mexico, but we are ongoing with several initiatives to be 100% fully structured. So I feel like it's hard to get more details, but as we compared, for example, Brazil, we have $1 to $16, but we don't have like inflation like Argentina, which is dollarized. You go everywhere, you can pay in dollar. There, the dollarization of your asset is something like precious. People receive money in dollars. Like they really prefer that. In Brazil, not so much yet. But I feel like to build a market here in Latam for the ones that want, and the use cases that we'll be able to build will be one, having regulation clear, which I feel Brazil is really well ongoing. Argentina has some ideas, but I don't think Brazil is, no other country so structured and with a full project as Brazil. Second,
I agree.
Where you build the right VASPs license and which are the rules per country to operate properly. And the other piece is, if you think about sizing, every tech company, fintech company, think about sizing, right? So Brazil is huge. Everyone wants Brazil. Argentina is a moment that it's trendy, I would say, because of the inflation, because of all the changes from Milei. And some countries are really small. So these are not so targeted. For example, we launched a stablecoin in Chile. Everyone asked me why. No one is looking for it. And there's a lot of potential.
What's the answer? I'm curious as well. I was going to ask that.
There's a lot of potential. No one is looking. There's a lot of potential. There's a good financial structure, and we'll be able to build someone that no one did. You know, if you think about, Mexico is really promising, but the regulatory work is really high demanding for you to operate properly, but the volumes are huge. If you think about the corridor between Mexico and United States for remittances, for example, it's huge. Everyone is looking for the big buckets, but there are some small ones that are really more strategic where we want to build our rails as it goes. But I feel like, and I've been talking to several people about it, if we think about our market, our solutions start with the lawyers and the regulators. So when we think about building a product, selling something, the legal director from Transfero, the head of compliance are my best friends. I'm really close to them to make sure that what I'm building, it's properly. And if we think about team play, it's something really different from other markets. And I was headhunter, so I really like to see talents in the space and the soft skills that they need to have. But at the end of the day, I'm not a lawyer, but I learned so much because they are the starting point of a successful solution. And that's something that we should have in mind when other talents switch to the market or build things in Brazil or any other country. It's something really important to have in mind.
Yeah, and I just, as an outsider, there is massive opportunity all over the world, of course, with this technology, but specifically to Latin America, I'm not an expert on Chile or, Peru maybe, and how their financial system works, but I would go out on a limb and say that probably not as many countries have the efficient financial system that again, Brazil would have through Pix. And those are really, in my view, the key markets where you can have the biggest impact. Maybe, the volumes for remittances or whatnot are not massive, but you really have the opportunity to start these grassroots movements within society, whether it's for consumers or businesses, by helping them with their day-to-day life. even if it's transaction between, again, mom and pop, or whether it's, purchases between businesses, right? Trying to go about their day. There is a lot of opportunity, and it makes 100% sense that you guys are trying to build that network of utility and adoption across the region.
May I ask, so you guys started in Brazil, expanded to Argentina, now Chile. Would the next country be something like a Peru or like Ecuador, or like like you say, countries that most people are not thinking? Or is the next country something like a Mexico, or a Colombia, like a larger economy? Where do you think you go next? And is Transfero going to have like 10 stable coins and 10 countries that it operates on and off ramps in Latam, maybe in the next 5 years? Like, what's the strategy for you guys?
We have a strategy to grow in emerging markets for sure. And we have 15 countries ongoing on regulation status. So I think we'll play next the ones that we close the gap with the regulatory process first. And how we cannot measure in the timeline properly at this time. So we have 15 countries, including Colombia, Mexico, and several other ones. We have some redundancies in Africa. We had some redundancies in Europe. But we can play with partners, or we can build our own rails. And that's the moment that we're kind of building as we go. If we think about the network of stables, this is a dream, but we don't have this still, which will be the next one. We're just launched Chile like 2 to 3 weeks ago. So we're really building those three and make it work. But I feel like the regulatory ongoing status will guide us on the next moves, and we'll be announcing them. But the goal is really to get a global system, and we will get there.
So when we talked with Chris from Yellow Card, he said, like, we're building Africa as a service, right? So you connect with us and you get on and off ramps in 20 countries. And essentially, like, if you want to move money across Africa, like, we are the solution. Like, that's their pitch. Very, like, you go to one place, you have everything there. Like, how you guys think about it is, we not only have the on and off ramp in each country, and we're not only going to do it in Latam. We have 15 economies, I would guess, emerging markets, like you said, Africa, Asia, and of course, Latin America. And you have the stablecoin to like facilitate your operation as well, potentially to lower your cost, right? Because you can make some money on the float on the stablecoin. So the plan is emerging markets as a service, if you will, for your clients. Awesome.
Yes, I can say that today our expertise is Latam.
No, sorry, go.
No, go ahead. Just saying that today our expertise is Latam, but the goal is emerging markets worldwide. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. The question I had is, how does the owning a stable coin change your... I would say the core business is still on and off ramps, right? Like people going from fiat to crypto and crypto to fiat. How does owning a stable coin, which is a leg in that flow of funds, like what does that enable you to do? Like more detailed, is it more a financial thing where you can essentially subsidize the on and off ramp because you are owning float? Is there anything around like speed of flow of funds? Like tell us a little bit more about, like, because that's quite unique, right? Owning the stablecoin. Like most players don't own a stablecoin when they do this. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, I think about reduced costs because I don't have intermediaries. I think about speed because it's all in the house. And I feel like we can create specific flows with no intermediaries that no one can, and especially having two stable coins paired with different fiat money, you can really work 100% via stablecoin. We're partners really close with Circle, Tether, so we're able to get access for EURC and USDC as well, but doing it all those countries inside the house, having all the collateral and reserves where everyone knows that it's kind of where we manage some profit and stuff, right? But from the reserves and collateral, depending on the bond. So there are several things that we're able to do. And at the end of the day, today in the market, we have several people that doing a part of it. And when you have all the fees from the intermediaries, you don't get the best costs ever. And when you do everything in-house, you can manage the best pricing, and you can think about the business as an overall, where you can sometimes get a smaller fee here, a higher one here, and build the business in a healthier way than other ones, because you're always pushing on the fees on your providers and partners to make it happen. So I feel like on the speed, on the pricing, and maybe in the innovation and autonomy to build new flows as it goes.
Mm-hmm. So I would say then you have, like, your main provider is the bank that is receiving the fiat, and essentially the bank for custody of the collateral asset. But outside of that, the rest is all you, right? So you KYC the customer, you know who the customer is, you have that one relationship, but then from there on, it is all in-house. How much of the flow is going, let's say, Brazilian real, BRZ, and connect out versus Brazilian real to BRZ to Argentinian peso to like fiat, Argentinian peso fiat out? Like, how much of that stays inside of the transfer ecosystem versus kind of like leaving? And probably it's going to be mostly leaves, right? Because you like the stable coins is still emerging. But do you see a trend around like things staying in house and kind of like essentially you're building your own Swift, if you will, right? Like your own model to compete with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so I don't know exactly the percentage right now in my head, but I can check it out. But today we had last year 1 billion transactions in volume in dollars, and this year we have $1.5 billion closing last month. So we have more on this market. I mean, the majority of companies is the ones that don't have structure in Brazil that really wants to receive money locally. There are some demands in the country, but there are different ones. Like we work with Bybit. There's an exchange that enables them to make the business here as they don't have all the structure they needed. We have the credit cards with them, for example. There are other Comex companies, for example, between Brazil and Argentina that has all the business there and they can enable this into our infrastructure. There are several other ones that works as we can play our OTC desk for liquidity in several other exchanges and liquidity for tokens. So there is another source that we use a lot that is not connected with the payments per se, but it's a really source of revenue and structure and connectivity that we have. So there are several ones, and I don't have the percentage properly, but I feel like there are several different ones to share.
Awesome. And since we are reaching the top of the hour, Juliana, maybe asking a few fun questions. And Martin, I don't know if you have anything else specific to the business that you want to ask, but maybe something
I could be here all day. Like, I think it's like super interesting what you're building, because you are essentially like Brazil is the core of like Latin America, right? Like Mexico is so far, like almost no one like trades with Mexico, but Latin America, they're two big trading partners, or maybe three. Is like China, US, and Brazil, right? So if you have a foot in Brazil, and if you have a foot in Argentina, in Chile, in Peru, Colombia, I would guess all of those are next. Essentially, everything that I'm moving from one place to the other, the most efficient way to do it should be Transfero, right? And if you reduce the cost of doing that business significantly, like maybe you can get TradFi players who are saying like, why would I use Swift or my traditional correspondent banking model if I can use Transfero? And like going in that direction feels like there's real value here. And like starting out of Brazil, which is like this big engine, is an amazing place. So I'm very excited for what you guys are building.
And the
Thank you
question
so
that I was
much.
going to ask Juliana was, coming from Paxos, obviously a pioneer in the digital asset space, building infrastructure for regulated institutions. What were some of the biggest lessons that you took away from their role into Transfero? Of course, this regulatory first mindset is one of them. What else do you think were you able to take away as a lesson and apply in this new business that you're building?
Well, I think like Paxos has been a really regulated path, and I feel like it's harder one, but it's the right one. So it's something that me and the whole Transfero team believes it a lot. The second piece is, I think, how differences and similarities we have. Like United States, there is super different mindset from a Latin one, and there are several adjustments that we need to do culturally to add for each customer. But at the end of the day, I feel like the way that they built, it's super regulated and super strategic all over the world. And I feel like I learned from the best what to do and what not to do if we think about what's right for the end user, how build something that can go ahead globally with no boundaries, and the type of connections that you need to do, and the type of forcing problems you should do to make sure you build the right things. So I feel like these are the lessons I learned at Paxos that are really close to the team, and I really admire their company.
That's great. And aside from this podcast, Martin and I, of course, work for Mountain Protocol, and we are the issuer of a regulated stablecoin, and we know how difficult that path is, but we also agree that it is the right and only path long term for bringing this technology to the masses. Maybe another quick question and a fun question for you, Juliana. What are some of the things that the average crypto user, the average crypto bystander would be surprised of when learning about Brazil and the crypto markets? Are there any fun anecdotes, fun stories regarding crypto adoption in the market, regarding your personal story or Transfero dealing with crypto in the markets? Anything worth teaching our viewers and listeners?
Well, fun story per se, no, but something that's really amazing in the market is that there's a lot of things in the UX that you see that you feel, wow, it's done, it's ready, and so many manual things still in the back end, and so many things that are being built as they test and see the value. So I feel like there is some important things when people, for example, oh, I invest in Bitcoin, I understand how the rails work for the financial technology. And I say, no, it's completely different. Bitcoin is this thing. You're investing this one, but the potential of the technology is so much higher that you have no idea of how it is. And then you explain how the solutions work today and how the details on the technical B2B side, and they understand. But I feel like at the end of the day, no one will need to know about the blockchain, right? They just will have an amazing experience, a safe one, and say, wow, it's working. So it's fun to talk about the blockchain where people think it's something like really different from what it is. And it's just something simple and faster than they imagine.
Yeah, and it's so funny how every time I'm speaking to someone about crypto and they ask me, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Okay, I work for a stablecoin. How do I give them enough knowledge to understand what a stablecoin is?" And you need to start with blockchain, and with Bitcoin, and then with the smart contracts, and you just need to build those different modules of knowledge until they are able to grasp fully what we're doing. And it's a challenge, but it's also something I think important that we need to do as an industry. And ideally, getting rid of that complexity is key. And we really are at a point in the market where all of the infrastructure that has been built over the years is allowing for that abstraction of the complexity. And again, Transfero is playing a key role, like many other in this process, but it's still a challenge. And you always see the light bulb going on people's head whenever you're able to pass along a concept the right way and explaining how the technology is so much more efficient, transparent versus what we are dealing with today.
Yes, I agree.
Awesome. Well, I think that was a very insightful conversation, Juliana. Maybe to wrap things up, a couple things. Where can people follow you and Transfero? I don't know if you have any social media, LinkedIn, Twitter that you want to mention. And also, what are you excited about for the next 3 to 6 months?
Perfect. So you can reach me out at LinkedIn. I worked 7 years there, so still my heavier social media. So Juliana Felipe Transfero. If you put Juliana Transfero Paxos, you will find me. And in the next 3 to 6 months, I feel like we're closing the planning for next year and the events that will be and the solutions that we're launching, especially on utility. So I'm really excited about the utility solutions that we're building with the checkout, with the big project, with VTEX for merchants to make sure that people really can set stables and crypto wherever they want. I feel it would be a really switch to utility, which we're expecting for.
That's awesome. I look forward to coming to Brazil and paying with stable coins whenever
Please
I'm going
come.
to buy my groceries, and I'll text you guys and ask if you're behind that transaction. But thanks a lot, Juliana, for coming on the podcast today. We really enjoyed the conversation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.